Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. How's everybody doing? It's a little rainy outside, right? But your hair looks amazing, ladies. It is low humidity in here. Let's take a sigh of relief. Aren't we happy about that? It is my absolute pleasure to welcome you to the State of Women and Girls in Philadelphia, telling our stories. Are you excited to be here? So I'm going to do a little call and response. Say, I am excited to be here today. Me too. Can you tell? I am honored to have been asked to MC this event. This is a historic occasion marking the first summit of the Philadelphia Commission for Women. Can we please give today a round of applause? Philadelphia is always at the forefront of movements, and today is no different. I am so delighted to be here. And just to give you a little bit of a background, you, the voters of Philadelphia, were the ones who created this commission. On the May 2015 ballot, Philadelphia was asked whether there should be an amendment to the Home Rule Charter to create a permanent commission for women. Philadelphians, they always get it right. They overwhelmingly voted yes. So what you are seeing here today is the work of your commission that you voted for. And I know that the entire commission should be here, right? Hello, ladies. Right? You want to stand up really quickly and say hello? I know folks are still filling in. Let's give our 27-member Commission on Women a round of applause. All right. Now, we have 27 members. 10 appointed by the mayor, 17 by city council, for again, 27 Philadelphians representing the diversity of the women in our city. I mean, there's so much work to do, but we've come so far, right? And let me just put out a little point. Look around, because there was no advertisement done for this event today, and yet more than 300 women registered merely by word of mouth. Aren't you so glad you know somebody and you got on the email chain? And I know the rest of the women will be filling in because it is a lot of rain going on, so we're going to give them a little bit of time. I want to just say I'm also happy to be here at the Community College of Philadelphia. Community College is my neighbor that is right down the street from my office at KYW News Radio. If you haven't been there, we're right at 15th and Spring Garden. And just like the Philadelphia Commission for Women is your commission, Community College of Philadelphia is your college. Here to welcome you is my friend and a woman that I truly admire, Ms. Lynette Brownstow, Vice President of Marketing and Government Relations. She is a woman of distinction. Lynette also is chair of the Philadelphia Housing Authority, former chair of the Philadelphia Zoning Board, and was deputy mayor of administration under Mayor Ed Rendell. In addition to her many other titles, this woman is not just fierce, but she's also very, very busy. She is also the founder of Women of Destiny, helping to prepare the next generation of women of color for leadership. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our host for today, Lynette Brownstow.
Good morning. Good morning. It is so good to be here and to see all of you here today. And I also want to say a special good morning to the men in the room. To the men in the room. Give them a hand. Thank you for being here to support us today. I bring you greetings from 30,194 students here at Community College of Philadelphia. 18,418 of them are women. We have 1,500 employees, the faculty and staff here, and 56% of them are women. So women are here at Community College of Philadelphia, and we're running the place. I want to first greet our mayor and say thank you. Yes, legislation made this happen, but he is the one who's making it happen today. So I want to thank him for his foresight and understanding that women are important and women are the ones that get things done. Years ago, Diane Kenney, who was the first woman who led the Women's Commission, and then after that was my dear friend, the late Barbara Daniel Cox, We all worked very hard to put the issues of women on the forefront of this city. And so we have done a lot, but there's a lot more that has to be done. I want to give greetings to our keynote speaker, Christina Tchen. I didn't meet her this morning. Good morning, good morning. She's the former Chief of Staff of the First Lady, Michelle Obama, but I bring you greetings from Deisha Dyer, who Deisha is a graduate of Community College of Philadelphia, and Deisha was the social secretary for the White House, and she was our commencement speaker. So she told me to tell you she's traveling today, so she would not be able to be here. I also want to say, I know the other panel members, people that I love dearly, and Bridget Daniels. I didn't see her yet this morning. Good morning, Bridget, and welcome. And I also want to say congratulations on the Corbin part of the name, which is, she just got married this summer, so congratulations on that. Varsovia Fernandez, who was our chair of our board at the college, is also here with you today. Donna Frisbee Greenwood, and also Rochelle Levin, and Jane, one of my favorite young ladies, is also here. These women are movers and shakers, and I welcome you here to Community College of Philadelphia. I also want to say to the mayor, you have a great person who you've asked to lead this. Jovita and I go back years and years and years. She's always been in the forefront of issues in this city, especially women's issues. So you're under good hands, the commission, with her leadership. I am also honored to be and grateful that I am be a part of the State of Women and Girls in Philadelphia Telling Our Stories Summit. Some of you that sit here are very prestigious. You're on boards. Some of you are presidents, you're elected officials, you're CEOs, you're directors of organizations, your mothers, your daughters, your sisters, your wives, and your aunts. But being here today says that you are leaders, so I welcome all you leaders here today. The commission has created a robust program for you today. This morning we'll learn how to build good credit. And years ago, ladies, I wish I had learned that. So that's an important thing to go for, especially for us ladies, because we need to understand that. And that's a piece in most of our lives that we really haven't learned that well. You'll hear real stories today. You'll hear stories from real trailblazers in innovation, in economic empowerment, in education, in health, and civic engagement, and who will express their views and experiences on the status of women in these areas. They also will tell you about their victories and how they build on your success, and how they turn their losses into gains. They will give you insight and strategies on overpowering obstacles and other guidance on how we can help each other achieve and make progress, so that when one of us makes progress, we all do. This world needs people to make things change, and usually it is women that do that. As the young Nobel Peace Prize laureate Malala Yousafzai said, one child, one teacher, one book, one pen can change the world. Nowhere is that truer than the case for women. We all have the ability to change the world, and as we change the world, we change lives. As we advance, so do our families, our communities, society, and the economies of the world change. We do work hard as women, and we raise young women to be CEOs and young men to understand the value of working women. When we empower the hand that rocks the cradle, we can surely create a better tomorrow for everyone. For years, I've tried to encourage women to be bold and take their seat at the table. Many of us in this room have worked tirelessly to make that happen. And yes, we have succeeded. But yes, there's so much more that has to be done. So there's still work to do. Some of us have been fighting this for decades, some of us for just a few years, and some of us will start today. It doesn't matter when you start. It doesn't matter how you do it, but all of us should be working collectively. So this summit allows us here in Philadelphia to hear the triumphant stories to be able to build on what happens to us in our communities and what happens to us individually. Their stories of greatness will inspire you and help you move forward. So I asked you today to be open to hearing the stories, open to learning from those stories, and I asked you today to connect with someone. Don't just grab business cards. Everybody says, can I have your business card? Can I have your business card? Don't just grab business cards. Make a commitment to meet those people somewhere else. Make a commitment to make a phone call. Email people, because we, as women, have to work together to make this city, our families, and the world a better place. I welcome you all here today, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Lynette. Next, I'd like to introduce Mayor James Kenney. Now, our mayor knows a thing or two about how important it is for women to have a seat at the table. Mayor Kenney has appointed women at the highest levels of his administration. Some of these posts have been history-making. It says a lot about his values and about how much he values diversity and inclusion. Dr. Ahmad, Deputy Mayor for Public Engagement, is the first person to serve in this capacity in this newly created office, and is the first Asian American woman to serve in a cabinet-level post in any administration. And we'll say that again, in any administration. Mayor Kenney's Deputy Mayor for Intergovernmental Affairs, Deborah Mailer, is a woman. His Chief Integrity Officer, Ellen Kaplan, is a woman. The Prisons Commissioner, Blanche Carney, is the first woman to serve in this capacity. And of course, there is his Chief of Staff, Jane Slusser, who you will hear from later this morning. Can we give those ladies a round of applause? Leading in the city administration, thanks to the mayor. So now, may I present Mayor Jim Kenney, and will Felicia Harris, Chair of the Mayor's Commission on Women, and Jovita Hill, Executive Director, please join the mayor.
Good morning, everyone. There is a reason why I made so many appointments of women to the government. It's because I want to get the job done right. So it's a little bit selfish on my part, but and I'd like to take a moment just to recognize our young ladies from Mitchell Elementary School. Please stand. Stand up. Thank you. Thank you very much. Our children, all of our children can succeed. If we give them the right resources to succeed, they will. And that's what we're working on every day. Also, Pedro Ramos, you are a Renaissance man, my friend. How are you? Nice to see you. Thank you. Throughout Philadelphia's history, women have endeavored to keep our city on the path to more equal and just society. Women have contributed in innumerable ways to the development of our city's character and to our social and civic progress. The contributions and role of women in the history and success of Philadelphia, however, have often been overlooked and underplayed. The inequality that women have struggled against throughout our city's and America's history is still being confronted today. Although great strides have been made toward gender equality, work still remains to be done in issues relating to fair and equal labor practices, gender disparities in healthcare, education shortfalls in STEM subjects promoted to girls, and career advancement in science and technology careers for women, and Hidden Figures is a move you should not miss. And now, more than ever, it's important that we protect the rights of women have gained while we fight for the rights that women deserve. Rights like workplace equality and equal pay, equal access to reproductive health care, and the continued demand for racial and gender equality. To keep these issues current and to ensure that the voices of women affected by these issues are heard, Philadelphia voters approved a change to the Home Rule Charter in May of 2015 to establish the Philadelphia Commission for Women. And I'd like to thank Blondell Reynolds Brown, who's sitting right up front, for that work. In June of 2016, under the umbrella of the Mayor's Office of Public Engagement, Jovita Hill was appointed. she's here, was appointed, you were sitting there, I'm sorry. Javita Hill was appointed as Executive Director of the Philadelphia Commission for Women and went to work examining and promoting the civic, educational, and economic policies that challenge and enhance the lives of women and girls. I'd like to ask Jovita, who's already here, and the Chair of Commission, Felicia Harris, to join me as I present the Philadelphia Commission for Women with a proclamation honoring the occasion. I will read just an excerpt. On March 31st, 2017, the inaugural State of Women and Girls in Philadelphia, Telling Our Story Summit, hosted by the Philadelphia Commission for Women, takes place at our great community college of Philadelphia. The summit offers a brand new opportunity for women in Philadelphia to come together during Women's History Month to share their experiences of the issues that impact the lives of women and girls. Therefore, I, James F. Kenney, Mayor of the City of Philadelphia, do hereby proclaim Friday, March 31st to be the State of Women and Girls Summit Meeting Day. I want to thank you, Javita, and the Philadelphia Commission for Women for your service and advocacy for all the women in Philadelphia. And I'd like to thank Dr. Ahmad and Tina Tchen. I'd like to ask them to also join us on stage. Tina, you should know that the work inspired by the State of Women and Girls in Philadelphia, Telling Our Stories, as your service within the administration for President Barack Obama has helped lead the way. On behalf of the City of Philadelphia, we know that we appreciate all you have done and what you continue to do for gender equality and social justice. And we have a little Liberty, where is it? Thank you. And we have, this one actually works. The one downtown doesn't work too good. But we want to give you just a small token of our appreciation for you being here today.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. And this is for. Okay. And this is our proclamation. We used to have nice leather-bound covers, but I think we've gotten a little frugal. So thank you very much for that. And just let me say to all of you here and to all the women in this country, as you see what's going on in Washington for the past couple months, men can be really stupid and crazy. And we want to thank you for keeping it real, for raising your voices, for marching in the streets. That Women's March in Philadelphia and around the country was a beautiful event. You are stronger than us. You give birth, we can't. If men had to give birth, there'd be no children. But you can do that, and you can run a household, you can run a business, you can run your life, you can run the world. We're very, very proud of you, and we need you, especially now more than ever. We need your brains, we need your guts, and we need your courage to stand up to what's wrong in this country. And we thank you, and we love you for it. So thank you very much. Thanks for being here.
Can we give them another round of applause? Thank you so much, Mayor Jim Kenney. He understands that women do get the job done. Every time I'm working with a team of women, I mean, it's like a ball of power and fire. And I just love the diversity in this room as well. The Women's March proved that women can work together across all sorts of socioeconomic lines, and it's so wonderful to see so many diverse faces here today. Now, the next woman on our program needs no introduction. For decades, she has led the charge to improve the lives of women, children, and families during stadium negotiations under Mayor Street. Her initiative created the Fund for Children, which requires the Sixers and the Eagles to each contribute $1 million annually for grants to organizations that provide services to children. We are here today because of her bill that created the Philadelphia Commission for Women. Please join me in expressing heartfelt gratitude to Philadelphia's champion of women and girls, the Majority Whip of City Council, the guardian angel of the Philadelphia Commission for Women, and one of the hardest working elected officials, man or woman, in this city, Councilwoman at Large Blondell Reynolds Brown.
So as a former third grade teacher, I would give that a B+ response. my heart always gets full when you are reminded that the work you do is not in vain. So I'm very thankful to be here. On this last day of Women's History Month, we want to first thank our mayor, Kenney, who is authentic. He's so very, very authentic when it comes to speaking to those issues close to his heart. So I am thankful that he took what was on paper, unanimously supported by my colleagues, and has indeed moved to make it real. To our host, Lynette Brown-So here at the Philadelphia Community College, to my friend and a champion of women, I thank you. To the leadership of the Commission for Women in Javita Hill, our work has just begun. And to the Deputy Mayor of Public Engagement, Nina, where are you? Our work has just begun. There are now 6 women in the Philadelphia City Council, a historical fact. And one of them has joined us this morning, a woman whom I respect enormously because she always has to fight uphill and every time she starts finish line, and that is the representative for the 7th Councilmatic District, and you all should know that that is whom? Councilwoman Maria Quinones Sanchez. Stand up, Maria. And then to the women serving on the commission, your volunteerism matters. You're giving your time, your intellect, your talent, and I believe always that President Bill Clinton said it best when he said, volunteering is an act of heroism on a grand scale, and it matters profoundly. It does more than help people beat the odds, it changes the odds. And so know that the time you give matters and should not go unrecognized when you are figuring out how we can face new challenges facing women in this city. You should know that I am a single working mother, walking on a tightrope backwards, blindfolded with high heels on, always trying to get it right. I like to make that clear. I was raised by a mother who was a widow at age 37, with 7 children left to figure out how she was going to figure it out. And it's clear to me that why I feel so strongly about lifting women up is because of her example. There were 7 of us, and I was the oldest. I always had to lead by example. And she made it very clear to us that Monday through Fridays, we were where? In school. And on Sunday mornings, we were in Sunday school, and then we were in church. And on Saturday mornings, we were not permitted to sleep late. My mother said, get up and act like you have a job. And so I learned from her this word, Southern term called gumption, which also means moxie. And I know that that's what's required for us as women if we want to lift each other up and cast the net wide so that we can bring each other along. And the last fact I'll share about my mom is that my mom worked 3 jobs to put 7 of us through college, and we all graduated. So here we are, 100 years ago this month, women were marching around the country demanding the most fundamental right, and that is the right to vote. I want you to know your history. 733 days ago, former Mayor Nutter signed an ordinance authorizing a ballot question for the Commission on Women, which we know went to change the Home Rule Charter, went to you, the voters, and you made it real. 281 days ago, Mayor James Kenney joined the Office of Public Engagement to announce the appointments of the Philadelphia Commission for Women. 69 days ago, 5 million women worldwide marched in Philadelphia, New York, California, and Antarctica, demanding our fundamental rights of equity, justice, and human rights. What does that all mean? What has brought us here today? In 1999, I came to City Council as the only woman sitting at large. Having a seat at the table has meant a number of things to me. Why did I ever even think about the notion of having the audacity to take the leap to run for office? The short story is there were 50 state senators in Harrisburg. There were 50 state legislative aides. There were no people of color, and I was the only woman. And what I learned very, very early on as a legislative aide is that if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And if you're on the menu, typically the agenda is not going to be in your best interest. So that gave me the inspiration, if you will, to try to get to the table. And so I ran for office, and the second time around, I got it right. 7 years later, in 2007, it was still a fact that few women were running for elected office. Only 9 of the 58 Democratic candidates in the last 3 primaries were women. History broke, the glass ceiling was broke in year 2000 when President Anna C. Verna broke the glass ceiling after 300 years and became the first president of Philadelphia City Council. And then I read the President Barack Obama's report on the White House Council report on women and girls in 2011. I was struck, and this was after 50 years. No one had written a report on the status of women and girls in 50 years. But it was President Barack Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama and Ms. Jarrett who thought it appropriate and timely to produce a report about women. Having my own experience, reading that comprehensive report, and looking at the corporate boards in Philadelphia, because at the same time, incidentally, the Forum for Executive Women had also produced a report, and Pat Coulter of the Urban League had written an article talking about how Urban Outfitters, right down there at the Naval Shipyard, had no women on their board. Really? I'm a firm believer that strong and empowered women do create strong and empowered families, and when we have that, we have certainly more vibrant communities. So, my activism didn't just start when I got to City Council. I was a student at Girls High School where I marched in my first march against the Vietnam War. It was there that I learned that being active and engaged on the front line matters. Here's the good news. On indicators ranging from education attainment to economic security to health and wellness, women and girls have made progress. If you take the time and read that report produced by President Obama. And we've excelled, I won't bore you with the numbers, we've excelled in terms of growing small businesses with women of color, growing businesses at a quicker and faster rate. Women have risen to the heights of government and industry and the like. But there's another reality. While we should feel encouraged and inspired by the progress, the achievements may be blurred because there's still very real challenges and disparities that still persist for our women and girls. And here's the one that resonates for me. When I came to City Council, we were making 77 cents to a dollar of our male counterparts. That was 2000. It's now 2016. We now make 79 cents to our male counterparts. And if we continue at that pace, my 20-year-old daughter, a junior at Syracuse, will be 75 years old before we are making $1 to $1 of our male counterparts. We have work to do. So here's my charge to you. Recognizing and being somewhat fearful, I mean, I sleep every night with CNN on, trying to, figure out what's going to happen when I wake up the next morning. We have threats in Washington, D.C. We have to reckon with that and the possibility that all the gains we've made, 2 cents over the last 17 years, are threatened to be pushed back. The report that the Mayor's Commission of Women have produced matters. Getting data matters. But then there comes a time you have to put the report down and go to work. We have more reports than we'll ever be able to do anything with. It's time to take that intellectual action and move it to physical activity and go to work. That's my charge to the Mayor's Commission for Women with the wonderful report you have produced. And so in closing, because time does matter, I want to offer 3 nuggets of how I believe we should approach the execution of that document. When I get a chance, which isn't often, like to go down on River Drive to get my power walk in. And have you ever noticed the geese on River Drive? How do they fly? In a V formation. So consider a few of these lessons from geese. Fact 1. As each goose flaps its wings, it creates an uplift for the birds that follow. By flying in a V formation, the whole flock has 71% greater flying range than if each bird flew alone. What is the lesson in that for us as people? People who share a common direction and sense of community can get where they are going quicker and easier because they're traveling on the thrust of one another. Fact 2, when a goose falls out of formation, it suddenly feels the drag and resistance of flying alone. It quickly moves back into formation to take advantage of the lifting power of the bird immediately in front of it. What's the lesson for us as women who care about our communities and our families? If we have as much sense as a goose, we stay in formation with those headed where we want to go. We are willing to accept that help and give help to others. One more. When a lead goose tires, it rotates back into formation and another goose flies to the point position. That's actually true. Have you ever seen it? It pays to take turns doing the hard task and sharing leadership. It pays to take turns in doing the hard task and sharing leadership. As with geese, people are interdependent on each other's skills, capabilities, and unique arrangements of gifts, talents, and resources. So take a few lessons from geese. 2 more nuggets. My last semester in graduate school, I read this wonderful book called Move Ahead with Possibility Thinking, written by Reverend Robert Schuller. I've given out many copies of it, and I've kept my own tattered copy because it's out of print. But it really set the stage and set my head and spirit as to how I would approach challenges and opportunities in my life. And I want to share this with all of you because it works, and I'm a living testimony. Are you a possibility thinker? Possibility thinkers resemble the hummingbird that look for and find honey often in the most unlikely and unthinkable places. They perceptibly probe every problem and proposal and opportunity to discover the positive aspects present in any situation. Impossibility thinkers make sweeping passes over a proposed idea, scanning it with a negative eye, only looking for the distasteful aspects. Know anybody like that? Impossibility thinkers look for reasons why something won't work instead of visualizing ways in which it could work. Councilwoman Maria Cornelia Sanchez says often in City Council, it doesn't have to be an or. Let's figure out how we can make it an and. And that is one of the most powerful lessons for me as a legislator. Further, impossibility thinkers immediately, impulsively, instinctively react to any positive suggestion with a sweeping, unstudied, irresponsible assortment of reasons of why it can't be done. Impossibility thinkers are people who suffer from a mental malignancy this is my definition, I'm not a medical physician, but I call it the impossibility complex. They are problem imaginators, failure predictors, trouble visualizers, obstacle visionaries, and always exaggerated cost estimators. It behooves us to be possibility thinkers. Possibility thinkers keep striving until they climb over, find a pass through, tunnel underneath, or simply stay and turn the mountain into a molehill. Possibility thinkers are resourceful people, and we train ourselves to look for all those possibilities in life. That will be required for the women on this commission and for women who are authentic and caring about bringing somebody else to the table. I close with knowing that we have to be either a lion or a gazelle. Every morning in Africa, a gazelle wakes up. It knows it must run faster than the fastest lion or it will be killed. Every morning in Africa, a lion wakes up. It knows it must outrun the slowest gazelle or it will starve to death. So at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you're a lion or a gazelle. When the sun comes up, you better be running. Let's go to work. Thank you very much.
Didn't I tell you she was one of the hardest working folks in Philadelphia? Every time I see a councilwoman she is out there working hard. And so in her honor, can we just repeat after me? I am a possibility thinker. There you go. Thank you so much, Councilwoman. We can give her another round of applause. Now, next up to welcome you is Dr. Nina Ahmad. Nina oversees the Philadelphia Commission for Women, the Office of Black Male Engagement, the African American Male Commission, the Men and Boys of Color Coalition, the Asian American Affairs Commission, the Youth Commission, and the Millennial Advisory Committee. She's busy too. I present to you Dr. Ahmad.
So I am a possibility thinker. That's why we're here. And all of you are possibility thinkers. I thank the Councilwoman for giving us this inspiration, not just today, but every day. She does it every day, and that's what we have to do. There are high points and low points, but we have to keep on going, either the gazelle or the lion, right? So I want to thank Cherry, for doing such a great job thus far. Before we move on, I wanted to just introduce to you the city's new executive director of the Mayor's Office of LGBT Affairs, Amber Hikes. Are you here, Amber? There she is. Amber is well known in our community, and we are enthusiastic about her perspective on LGBT advocacy and policy. So I want to make sure we welcome her warmly, and let me tell you, she's already hard to work. She's volunteering here today with all of us, so she's fit right in with the family. So I'm delighted that the Commission is examining and assessing the status of women and girls. This summit, Telling Our Stories, is the first major convening hosted by this commission to gather Philadelphian women and girls from all walks of life. And I know we have some brave men in here as well. To hear from distinguished speakers and panelists about the interconnected issues that impact women. We are excited to be able to convene this summit so early on in the life of the commission. And today required a lot of pivoting on our part, as Javida Hill will attest to. Not having done this before, we could not imagine the level of enthusiasm and goodwill that has come our way. Initially, our goal was to target an attendance of 200 people. This room was supposed to be set up with 20 tables of 10 each, but we had overwhelming response, so we went into this auditorium-style seating. We will still engage with you during our conversations with the community, but we had to do this because you showed up. Thank you so very much. We got here with a lot of help from a lot of people. First, I would like to thank our presenting sponsor, TD Bank, who is also sponsoring the presentation on financial literacy, build and maintain great credit. Sponsors are very important to an event like this, and I would like to thank the Philadelphia Foundation, the University of Pennsylvania, Radian Inc., Diversified Search, Independence Blue Cross, Wells Fargo, and the Philadelphia 76ers. Sponsors who are here, would you please rise so we can acknowledge you? The members of the Commission for Women pitched in to do a lot of the tasks today. They have written articles for our anthology that will be released next month, assisted with helping us achieve our fundraising goals, helped with the registration and setup today, and this is an amazing group of women. Members of the Philadelphia Commission for Women, please stand. And they have pink ribbons, so you can see who they are later. Please know how much we appreciate the work you do to support the policies and enhance the outcomes for women and girls in our city. Thank you very much. We also got a lot of help from the Office of the City Representative, and the city representative right here, Sheila Hess, and her staff comprised and made this first-rate event happen. They're the best event planners I've ever worked with. The team is led by Elka Battle Murillo. Elka. So all this you see is really Elka, and she kept us all in line. critical support from the communications department. Where's Ajina? Is Ajina here? Ajina Amir. And also from the Chief of Staff's office, we have Deputy Chief of Staff Steve Preston. Where is he? Where's Steve? Steve ran away. And Vaughn Ross, if he's here. Everybody's busy with the budget hearings as well, so a lot of our folks from the city couldn't be here, but they all are sending their support. The lovely program book you hold is the work of Tammy Mullen, a creative specialist at the city of Philadelphia, and she was wonderful, pivoting with us every time we changed something. And also the most accommodating Greg Buber of the Central Duplicating, who delivered this product on time. So even though Greg is not here, we send him our best. The Office of Public Engagement exists to listen to you. What you have to say is very important because our mission is to be able to articulate your priorities and turn them into policies that advance social and economic justice. That's why it's very important that you fill out that questionnaire. Right in your clipboard, there's a questionnaire under your program. Please make sure you fill that out. So, quick aside, we had to buy all these clipboards because we moved from tables to clipboards, and then I had to dig in my house for my children's clipboards, and some of you might have these painted clipboards. Those are my daughter's birthday project when she was 5 years old. So now she's graduating college in May. So I kept them. Frugal. Women are frugal. So please make sure you fill out that questionnaire. We'll provide some time in the program for you to do so, and in May, we'll invite you and others who couldn't attend, we had a waiting list, by the way, to reconvene when we will share with you the results of that questionnaire and have you help us with your input establish the priorities that begin with you. So the Women's Commission will take the priorities that you decide on to work with them and bring them as policy recommendations to City Council and to the mayor. So if we are to be successful, we require partners in government, and those partners are men and women in City Council. And you just heard from our guardian angel, Blondell Reynolds Brown, and we also have Maria Quinones. I don't know if our other council people were able to make it. I know they have representatives here. I must acknowledge the tireless work done by Javita Hill, the executive director of the commission, to make this summit a reality. Very long nights, very long days, pivoting here and there, going with the flow. That's another trait we have, flexibility. You know, we know how to multitask, we know how to go with the flow and not make drama and just move on. And I thank Javita for doing that. Great job. I also want to give a shout out to all the members of the Office of Public Engagement who have pitched in. They're here. I'm running short of time, so I won't name them. And of course, our interns who have come here very early in the morning. We have high school interns, we have college interns, so thank you very much for being here, and all the volunteers who stepped up. There's a whole host of folks, some who work for the city, some who don't, some who are on the commission, some who are just being helpful. So thank you very, very much. And a big shout out to our public engagement analyst, Krishna Rami, who is the glue that kept this myriad of tasks aligned. So I thank you, Krishna. Where are you? There you are, okay. Our youngest member of the team. But most of all, I want to thank all of you. In that vein, let's get started with our first presentation of the day, Build and Maintain Good Credit. Thank you so very much.
I am the Sales and Service Manager at the TD Bank on 15th and JFK, right across the street from City Hall. My job there is to oversee the operations of the bank, coach the employees, just kind of be there to support them, be their backbone. So that is what the Sales and Service Manager role is. This is my store manager, Diana Utu, and she's just going to tell you a little bit about what her role is.
Good morning, ladies. I'm really, really honored to be here in this wonderful, beautiful room. And it takes me back to when I first started back in the 70s. I'm only 21. When I became one of the very few military female in the Coast Guard. And after 20 years, it was really wonderful to experiment and see a lot of the things and the challenges that we go through as a female in the world. But I was really excited that today everything is changing, and then diversity and the openings and the world is a lot bigger now for us. So now after 20 years in the military and 15 years with TD Bank, I'm really proud to say that we do have a chance if you really want to go for it, but you have to work hard for it. So this is why this piece here is so important to all of us, because we need to make sure that our credit is where it needs to be, so, to be able to succeed. So my name is Diana Utu. I am a vice president for TD Bank, and I'm honored to pass the mic to one of our tomorrow's leaders at TD Bank.
Thank you very much. So to get the seminar started, we're just going to go over a little bit about our objectives today and the topics that we want to cover. So the first objective is understand what a credit score is and why it's important. That is so essential, because how can you create and maintain great credit if you don't understand what it is? The next is the most common and easy ways to build credit history. So we're going to give you some pointers on when you're just starting out, what's the best thing you can do at an early age, even before you get your first job, to start building your credit as soon as possible. The next one is credit reports. They are essential to making sure that your credit is good. It's essential to look at them, to understand what you're looking at, and make sure that everything is accurate. Next is credit card pros and cons and do's and don'ts. Very important in maintaining good credit. Other sources of credit besides credit cards. So there's a lot out there that can help you build your credit. So we're going to expand on those sources besides just the credit cards. And last but not least is ways to keep your credit in good standing. So before the end of this seminar, you will understand the importance of maintaining a great credit score, understand how scores are calculated, and we'll also provide resource information needed to obtain a free credit report each year. And like I said, we'll also spend some time talking about credit cards and other sources of credit as well. So the next portion is the credit score. So what is a credit score? Everybody talks about it, but what is it really? So a credit score is a numerical forecast that shows the likelihood of loan repayment and is based on information from your credit report. We commonly look at the 5 C's of credit. So those are character. That's your reputation or your track record of repaying debts. Your capacity. It measures your ability to repay a loan by comparing your income and your debts. Capital. So do you have the money to make those monthly payments, or maybe to make a down payment on a home? Collateral. This is an important one. We will be talking about collateral quite often throughout this seminar. Collateral is what helps you secure a loan. So for example, if you buy a new car, your car loan is secured by the car. Your mortgage is secured by your home. So your home would be that collateral. The last C of credit is conditions. So that's your interest rate, your term. How much interest are you paying each month? So that's just refer to how you intend to use the money. And it also talks about the likelihood of being approved for a specific purpose. So we're going to move on to the history of the FICO. What is FICO? FICO is just another word for credit score. Fair, Isaac & Company was a credit scoring business and consulting agency founded in 1956, so pretty recent actually, by the engineer Bill Fair and the mathematician Earl Isaac. They developed credit scores as a way to measure credit risk. Fair, Isaac & Company was recently renamed Fair Isaac Corporation, FICO, which is what it's known as today. FICO scores are used to evaluate your borrowing potential. It's a snapshot of your credit risk given at any point in time. It's important to note that there isn't one specific cutoff for your credit score that lenders will use. There are many score ranges and different models, so it's hard to say technically what is a good score outside of the context of a particular lending decision. So we're going to talk more about the different ranges of credit scores later, but moving on to the next slide, we're going to talk about credit reports. Why are credit reports important? Information on your credit report can affect so many things in your life, including your interest rate on a mortgage, which is probably the most important interest rate you'll ever have. And it can also even affect a job application. It can help you find errors in your credit history and help catch signs of identity theft early, which is something that we see so often. Your credit report also verifies your identity, so you're going to want to make sure that your name and your address is all correct on your credit report. It also could have your full Social Security number or a portion of your Social Security number, your date of birth, and it could even list your current and previous employers. Your existing credit will be listed on your credit report. So information about your credit card accounts and how you use them. It will have your mortgages, your car loans, and your student loans. It may even also include the terms of your credit and how much you owe and your repayment history. So are you making your payments on time? Are you maxing out your credit cards? All of that is reflected on your credit report. It also will have your public record, so information about any court judgments against you, any tax liens against your property, and whether you have ever filed for bankruptcy. And last but not least is inquiries about you. So a list of companies who have recently pulled your credit report. Each time your credit report is pulled, it's listed on your credit report. So you want to make sure that you're mindful of that when you're applying for credit cards or mortgages. Each time you apply, it shows up on your credit report. Now, your credit report doesn't include your credit score. You may have to pay a fee to get your credit score with the report. And some credit card companies may provide your credit score for free with your statement. I know TD Bank is doing that now, so that's one way that you can check your scores if your credit card statement supplies it. Okay, so next slide. Okay, so by a show of hands, how many people out there have a credit card right now? It's a good portion of you. So credit cards are the most common and one of the best ways to build your credit. Responsible credit card use can help you build a solid credit history, but you also have to be careful because reckless credit card use can help bring down your credit score. So if you find that credit card debt has hurt your credit score, use your cards less, but keep the accounts open. So try to pay the card down, pay the balance down, but don't actually close that card because the more credit you have available, the better. People with no credit cards, so some people may think no credit is good, I'm just going to use cash, I'm great, but that may also be a risk because it's showing the credit bureaus that you don't have any history, so they don't know what kind of a borrower you're going to be. So there's several types of credit cards that you should become familiar with. So the most common one is just a standard credit card. With the standard credit card, you usually have a maximum spending limit on the card, and you can keep a balance up to that limit. So let's say your credit card limit is $1,000. You would be able to spend up to $1,000. However, you never want to spend more than you can pay back in 1 month. If you don't pay your credit card balance off each month, that's when they start to tack on interest-based charges, which is just money that's going to that credit card company, and it's not going towards your balance. So we want to make sure that you're not spending more than you can pay off at the end of each month. That is essential. So the next portion is secured cards. So remember that C that I had mentioned, collateral? This is where collateral comes into play. So when you apply for a secured credit card, we would open a savings account for you. And let's say your secured credit card limit is $500, so that's the maximum that you would be able to spend. Your collateral would be $500 of your own cash going into that savings account, and we would hold on to that money for you, so you wouldn't have access to that money, but that savings account would be your collateral. So if you couldn't make the payments or you defaulted, that lender has something to fall back on. So that's kind of your safety net, but you want to make sure you're making your payments on time. And it also does, the secured credit card also has a graduation program. So let's say you're a student, you take out this secured credit card to start building your credit. After 8 months of successful on-time payments and not going over the limit, we have something called a graduation program, which is different than typical school graduations. This is where your card will be converted into a regular standard credit card, and you will get your $500 back, plus whatever interest has been earned. So that's the cool thing. The secured credit card is nice to start out, but you do have that graduation program to look forward to, get your money back in your pocket, and your credit will be on the road to skyrocketing. And then with most credit cards, standard or secured, we also offer rewards programs. So they include travel miles, cash rewards, gift cards. So when you're shopping around for a credit card, you also want to take a look at what rewards they're offering, because just as much as you're shopping for them, you want to make sure that it's something that's relevant to you and that will, make sense and be useful in your daily life. All right, so on to the next slide. So the upsides and downsides of credit cards. So we're going to start with the pros of having credit cards. They're great for emergencies. I know one time, it was probably close to 2 years ago, I was driving home and my car just stopped. I wasn't out of gas. I don't know what happened. It just stopped. It was the coldest night of the year. I had a little thin, tiny blanket that I, put over me to keep me warm. But I had to pay for a tow truck, and I definitely didn't have enough money on hand. I had to use that credit card to save me that night. If I didn't have that, I really don't know what I would have done. My car would have been stuck there until who knows when. So credit cards are great for emergencies. They can also cover you in the event that you have, let's say, a car bill, car insurance bill, cell phone bill that you're kind of stuck and you can't pay. You can use your credit card to pay it. And it covers you. And then on top of that, you're earning those rewards. Credit cards are a great way you can establish credit history. So like I said, as long as you're making sure those payments are, those bills are paid in full each month, you're paying off your whole balance every month, it's a great way to boost your credit history and your credit score. And you'll avoid paying any interest charges. So nobody wants to just throw money away. The one way to ensure that with a credit card is to make sure that we are paying that balance off each month. Many credit card companies offer insurance and fraud protection, which in my opinion is the most important piece in today's society. We see fraud every single day, and it gets so much more advanced. The fraud detection and fraud protection can come in handy if your wallet is stolen or if somebody steals your identity. And then the last one is credit card companies will often reward you for using their credit card. So like I said, the airline miles, cash rewards, gift cards, definitely a pro because you're earning money by spending money, and that's pretty cool. Be sure to shop around for different credit cards and read the fine print. You want to make sure that you're specifically looking for the fees. So make sure you know if there's an annual fee or if there's a late payment fee, a balance transfer fee. Make sure you familiarize yourself with those because you don't want to be blindsided by a fee that you weren't expecting. So then the downsides to credit cards. APR is annual percentage rate. So that is your interest rate on your credit card. So the price of credit is really high, can be high. The interest rates that credit cards company charge can really add up over time. In addition, there can be additional costs, like I said, balance transfer fees, late fees, and over-the-limit fees. So make sure you know your annual percentage yield. And then another downside to having a credit card is it makes it really easy to overspend. You may not be able to afford the item you're buying, but when you charge it, it's just really tempting to just keep swiping. And I actually read somewhere that when you charge something on your credit card and you just overspend, you're going to pay 5 times what that item was really worth. So if you buy a $5 cup of coffee, you're really going to wind up paying $25 for that cup of coffee by the time you pay it off. So it's really important to make sure that you're living within your means and you're not overspending. Next slide. Okay, so credit card do's and don'ts. We do want to pay our credit card bills on time, and we do want to keep our balances low, and any other revolving credit that you have, keep your balances low. As a personal rule, we always say, don't spend more than 30% of your total credit line. So if your limit on your credit card is $1,000, try to keep your balance below $300. That's just a really good rule of thumb, and it will show the credit bureaus that you are a responsible spender. Do contact creditors or see a credit counselor if you're having trouble making those payments. Credit card companies want you to make the payment, so they will be willing to work with you if you can't pay it all in one shot. So give them a call and see what they can, what they can work out with you. It can't hurt to ask. We do want to shop around for the best interest rate and no fees. It's important to shop around because there's many different offers out there. You don't want to just jump the gun and go for the very first credit card you see. Shop around. See what works best for your lifestyle and for you. And the last one is don't open new credit cards that you don't need. So while having a few credit cards is very good, you don't want to open too many. It just leaves the liability of overspending and not being able to make those payments on time. So keep a few cards open that you use occasionally, but don't open credit cards that you don't absolutely need. Okay. So more about interest rates, late fees, and protection plans. So the interest rates on credit cards can be as high as 29%. That is really high. Don't want to pay that. Many credit card companies will offer an introductory interest rate for a limited amount of time, 6 months to a year. And some even offer 0% interest for a period of time that you're charging on the card, as long as you make the minimum payment each month. But you want to be prepared for when that introductory rate is over. If you still have a balance on the account, it's going to start charging you that 29% interest on the balance that you have outstanding. So make sure you're really reading that fine print. And like I said before, the best thing to do is pay your balance in full and as soon as possible to avoid having to pay those interest payments and those late fees. Late fees are a typical penalty for a credit card, and it's for not paying your credit card balance before the due date. So typically the late fees range from $20 to $30 per statement cycle, and the statement cycle is usually a 1-month time frame. So paying an extra $20 to $30 a month can really add up. In order to avoid the late fees, just make sure you're paying those credit cards as soon as possible. And then credit protection programs. It's a good idea to get some sort of credit protection. Like I said, in this day and age, we see a lot of fraud. And you want to make sure that you're protected because credit or identity theft is very time consuming. So it's a good idea to get some sort of protection. Credit card fraud protection can protect you, like I said, if your credit card is lost or stolen, or if somebody steals your identity. And then the next slide. So in addition to credit cards, like I had said, there's other sources for building credit. You may need a personal loan or a car loan, and in many cases, a mortgage or a home equity loan. Typically, when the lender has some sort of collateral, like a car or a house, then the interest rate for the loan will be lower because the risk to the bank or to the lender is less. So if that's why those credit card interest rates and the personal loan interest rates are generally higher, because there's no collateral besides your good credit securing that. Okay. Next slide. So keep your credit in good standing. This is the key to your credit score and your credit worthiness. So let's take a look at the different factors that we want to make sure we pay attention to. So there's one item listed on this circle that is kind of the one that ties everything together. And the one that stands out is budget and live within your means. I can't stress that enough. If you live outside of your means and you get yourself so underwater in debt, it's really, really difficult to pull yourself out. Best tip is just avoid getting to that point. Make those payments on time. Carrying large balances on credit cards can also mean that your minimum payment is just going towards the interest. And what that means is it never cuts down on your balance. So each month you're making those payments, but that $5,000 balance is still going to stay there because your interest rate is so high that your payment is just covering your interest. So throughout your lifetime, there will be many times when you don't have enough cash for a purchase or an emergency with your car, and having good credit will help you when you have a need to borrow. And remember these tips? So let's go over these tips really quickly. So diversify your credit. It's important to have different types of credit. Lenders want to see that you can pay back a mortgage, you can pay back an auto loan, a personal loan, a credit card. So it's important to diversify what you have and almost your portfolio. Like we said before, don't apply for so many credit cards. Keep maybe 3 or 4 that you absolutely, love and that the rewards are great, the interest rate is great. Keep those and don't apply for any more that you don't need. Monitor your credit report regularly. I think this is really important. If something pops up on your credit report and you don't know it for 6 months to a year, it makes it that much harder to go back and to fix it. So if you're looking at your credit report, I look at mine weekly. If you look at it even quarterly, it will help you see those little funky, weird pop-ups quicker, and you can dispute them quicker, get your credit back in order. Improve your payment history. So you want to make sure, again, you're making those payments on time. And if you're making payments on time, your bad credit history or your late payments will eventually go away. But you just have to make sure that moving forward, every single payment is on time, and it's hopefully to pay off your entire balance. Leave accounts open. So we always stress this. Pay them down or pay them off, but leave them open, because that shows that you are not using all of your credit. It shows that you're a responsible borrower and that you have the ability to pay back those credit cards. Reduce outstanding balance due. So if you do have a big credit card or maybe 2 credit cards that have big balances, my personal strategy, focus on one, pay that down, because you'll feel so much better seeing that big balance go down. Pay the one, pay it off, then move to the next one. Try to just stay focused and you'll see your credit score go up. Get back to current on delinquent accounts. So if you have delinquent accounts, call the vendor. Call the credit bureaus, see if they can work something out with you. Try to make those payments and repair your credit. Get back in order. You will feel so much better. So with all of these aspects, it's how you're going to create and build great credit. Okay. So as I mentioned earlier, you'll want to get an annual credit report for a couple reasons. You want to make sure that you know what's on there, and you want to make sure that you're doing well. So it's kind of like a report card for you almost. So up here is the interest rate for your free credit report, www.annualcreditreport.com. Please make sure that it's this specific website, because there are a lot of websites out there that are similar, but are not legitimate. There will be websites that will ask you to put your credit card information in and try to get you to pay. If it asks for it, don't do it. You're not on the right website. Make sure it's this one. And this website, it gives you access to the 3 credit bureaus. So a good rule of thumb, pull 1 credit bureau every 4 months. That way you're hitting each credit bureau and you're checking your credit report and you know what's out there. So make sure you take that website down and take that phone number down. That phone number, if you don't have access to a computer, you can call and they will mail you a copy of your credit report. And then we also, TD Bank also has a financial education learning center. So this is our website for our financial learning center, and it has a lot of cool little modules on there about identity theft, financing higher education, which is a hot topic for parents and students. So this is a brand new module that we just rolled out, I want to say at the end of October in 2016. So it's still in the early stages, but we would love for you to check it out and let us know what you think and provide any feedback or any ideas.
And he developed a work ethic out of being able to plow and pick cotton. He was one of the best in the county. He will never ever admit that, but he really was, from what I heard. And he took that skill, that work ethic, went to the Army, from the Army, went to Philadelphia, and found an opportunity to start a cable company at a time in the 1980s when that was the new innovation, that was the new technology. And 40 years later, we're one of the last African-American-owned cable companies left in the nation. And 10 years ago, he entrusted that legacy to me, his only daughter, a woman. And I really appreciate, thank you, I appreciate that he had a trust and he had the vision to know that, I think Mayor Kenney said it earlier, the woman, 1, get things done, and 2, that he knew that there wasn't a gender preference. I had brothers as well, but when it came to looking at who wanted to really rise to the occasion and take his company to the next level, it was myself. And I think that story should resonate with this particular crowd because it means that women, we can do whatever we want to do when we have the opportunity and the access and resources to do it. And I think with this panel and particularly this summit is all about how we build each other, how we empower each other, how we create those opportunities, whether it's in innovation, education, health, government, and how we can then build and grow with each other to build foundations and legacies. And for me, in innovation and technology, it really is a very interesting time. I mean, I think, technology is probably the next greatest opportunity to build wealth in the country. It truly is. It crosses all the platforms. Every woman that's on this panel, technology crosses every last one of these sectors. And I think we can go into that probably as we have our conversation. But innovation, particularly for women of color, is one of the ways that we're building businesses now. We are building businesses in this area. So I think there's a lot of obstacles that we can talk about, whether it's access, whether it's pay, whether it's getting hired, whether it's actually being valued. We can definitely talk about that. But I think this is a first step that the city of Philadelphia is saying is that we have each other's back, and we're going to help each other cross those difficulties so that we can then be part of a collective woman power that is building in innovation and technology. So I'm very happy to be here to talk about that.
Wonderful. Welcome to our panel. And when women succeed, we all succeed, right? All right. And now we have Varsovia. Tell us your story.
Thank you, Sherry. How long do I have?
Right.
So first of all, I want to thank you, a few women in this room. Nina, thank you. Jane, thank you. Sheila, thank you. Lynette, I don't know where you are. Phoebe. These are women that in one way or another, Joanna, are you still here, and Lee? Yes. These are women who carry me in one way or another as friends, as professionals, as sisters, as community partners. And I am an American, and I came to Philadelphia when I was 18 years old. I was born and raised in the Dominican Republic until the age of 12, truly raised in Puerto Rico until the age of 18. And I opted, managing 3 countries, it's really difficult. I opted for becoming an American and just staying here, doing that one thing and I honor that. So to me, that's really important in becoming a woman, in being a woman, because we are jacks of all trades as women. We don't have one story. We have many stories to tell. So I will tell you a little bit about that. I came from a very strong mother who is 93 years old. I was an accident, so she is too old for my age compared to my friends and peers. She's 93, she walks a mile a day, and she still bosses all 7 children around. So she lives in Puerto Rico, where she wants to die, and if you don't call her a couple of times a week, she will let you know. So I have some of that. Great father, also very strong, farmer, business, politician. He passed away. I am the youngest of 8 children. My oldest brother died in Vietnam. Very proud of that, even if he's not with us. And the boys are older, the girls are younger. I was always protected by all of them. You see some of that in my management style. You see that in most of my attitude, aptitude, and behavior. I can get bossy, yes. That comes from the boys who used to demand things from me. And I get feisty because my sisters were feisty. So just about everybody who knows me in this room have seen some of that. But I have a very big heart. I am very giving. And I love that about me. I love that about the people who appreciate it. I started in banking when I was in my late 20s with First Pennsylvania Bank. I don't know how many of you remember that bank, but it is 4 banks ago, Wells Fargo. There will never be a bank like First Pennsylvania Bank in this region. It was the best bank ever. The culture was amazing. Rosemary Greco, Lydia Hernandez, all those women held positions of leadership at First Pennsylvania Bank. Wells Fargo, actually, has a similar brand. Wells Fargo values women tremendously. The first women on Wells Fargo board was in the 50s. I think it was 1957. So I actually read about that stuff and follow that stuff because it's kind of nice to see what you can learn from all of this stuff, right? So I took a hiatus from banking and I went to technology because that was the gold rush of the 90s. I went to technology, I made some money, I grew up in technology. Then the internet thing came, I went into the internet thing. That busted, right? Big ugly bubble there for us in the economy. And so I noticed one day, right? I went into venture funding, and we funded this financial services company. I was the only woman, the only person of color, most of the time the youngest person in the room. And I thought, I think I need to go and make more people like me. And if you hear my This I Believe, WHYY essay, you can hear the full story on that. So anyway, I called Ken Trujillo. A lot of people here know Ken. And that was the Rendell administration. And I said, I want to come and do economic development work. I want to help people and teach them what I know, because we don't have enough people in these rooms. Somehow I ended up at Congreso during the Mayor Street administration, did some work with that administration. Eventually, I got another call from Ken that says, we need to help the Hispanic Chamber. Can you come and help? So I did that, and I spent 10 years helping the Hispanic Chamber. And then I thought, whoa, you spent 14 years in the not-for-profit, you need to make some money. You can give, but make some money so you can give. And I am back into banking. So is that long enough?
That is perfect.
And so here I am.
And we'll talk about some of the challenges in the
Yes.
financial sector on our next round. Donna Frisbee Greenwood.
Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. I am Donna Frisbee Greenwood, President and CEO of the Fund for the School District of Philadelphia, which is a private 501c3 that helps to manage private donations and secure private dollars in support of the School District of Philadelphia. I started my career as a teacher, and it was, I taught 7th grade at Elwood Elementary. I did not go to school for education. I hadn't planned to teach. It was something that kind of just happened after I graduated from school. I was volunteering a lot in college with young people and knew that I wanted to do something with young people, but hadn't gone to school to get an education degree. Wound up at Elwood Elementary and then Olney High School, taught for 2 years. And, but because I wasn't certified as a teacher, I was not paid what a certified teacher gets. And I found that I just couldn't live off of what I was making. And I wanted to move out my parents' house. And they wanted me to go. So I left teaching because I didn't have the certification. And as you think about the field of education, and women, 76% of all teachers across the country are women. But when you move up to the principal level, it gets to like 50%. And when you move up to the superintendent level, it's only 20% across the nation. That's what's happening in the field of education. So there are lots of us teaching at the classroom level. And then, so I went into the corporate sector, really didn't like that, really missed working with young people, was talking to my parents about it, and my dad said, well, if you don't like what you're doing and you don't see the job out there for you, create the job that you want. And so I co-founded a nonprofit called Children First, and with then State Representative Vincent Hughes. And we developed leadership skills in low-income adolescents. And so I got to use some of the skills that I learned as a teacher and also build this nonprofit organization, and suddenly found myself a nonprofit executive director. And I still wasn't 25 years old. I ran Children First and then decided that I needed to gain some skills, and I went to get a master's degree. And I ended up in New York working on a master's degree. But something happened before I decided to do that. I'd been grooming someone to take my place at Children First because I wanted to run an organization that was a bit larger. And so I applied for a position here in the city. I got down to be the finalist for the position. And in the interview, a woman said to me, well, don't you think you're a little young to run an organization of this size? And I said, well, I'm a finalist.
Y'all hear fingers snapping.
Right. So clearly you guys didn't think I was too young because I'm the only one of 2 finalists to get to this point. You thought that I had the skills, and why would you bring age into it now? And so that was really disheartening for me, that I'd been discriminated against because of my race, and now here I was being discriminated against because of my age. And so I went and got my master's degree, and I said, oh, I'll get my master's degree. And by then, I'll be close to 30. But I went and got my master's degree and ended up in Washington afterwards, working on policy in the Clinton administration. And then in Los Angeles, running an organization called Rock the Vote, where they most certainly did not care about my age. And it was a national nonprofit that organized young people to get involved in the political process, register to vote, and we were very successful in getting young people out in the 96 and 2000 election cycles. And so at that point, I was 29 when I went to run Rock the Vote. And so by the time I returned to Philadelphia, I was over 30. And no one questioned whether or not I was old enough or had the skills to run anything after that. And so I'll just stop there.
Thank you so much. Did y'all hear the finger snapping when they said, are you old enough? I heard it in my mind. I don't literally do it, but I heard it in my mind. So, Dr. Rachel, please tell us your story.
Sure. So the other panel talked about who maybe inspired them. And so I would like to highlight the inspiration of my mother. Now, I thought that she would be the oldest because she's 92, but she's not. But my dear mother is 92 years old. And my mother was the only graduating female law student at Boston University Law School in 1946. So my mother went to law school in 1946, where women didn't become professionals. In fact, my mother worked on John Kennedy's congressional campaign in 1947. So obviously, it's certainly an inspiration. So I'm a physician. I've been at Penn State Hershey Medical Center for 20 years. I moved from 80th and 1st in Manhattan at Mount Sinai to Central Pennsylvania in 1993, which was quite a change, and have worked at Penn State Hershey for many years in adolescent medicine. But I am also an openly transgender woman. So I transitioned at the Penn State Hershey Medical Center. I lost my mic there, but transitioned at the Penn State Hershey Medical Center. And that was a unique experience. So it was right there in central Pennsylvania, and I was fortunate because it was at an academic medical center and part of Penn State University. So I worked with the Office of Diversity to expand their non-discrimination policy, which at that time included sexual orientation, but did not include gender identity expression. So they expanded the policy and called it essentially the Levine policy. That was a unique experience. I mean, I wasn't just accepted, but I was welcome for the diversity that I brought. And I thought that that was going very well, and I was firmly ensconced in academic medicine. And then I got this phone call to be part of the Transition Committee for Health for Governor-elect Wolf. And after that committee was done, had discussions about being Physician General. And very quickly, in January of 2015, I was asked to serve and then was nominated and sworn in as Physician General of Pennsylvania, which has been a unique experience working for Governor Wolf, who is the best job because I have the best boss. I guess we're moving on to this now. And, it's public speaking. You just keep going, and hope that people follow you. And have advocated for women, for LGBT individuals, and particularly for public health in regards to the opioid epidemic, which is really the biggest public health crisis in Pennsylvania. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Rachel. We appreciate your story.
So I'm Jane Slusser. I'm Chief of Staff to the Mayor, and I go back to how Bridget started this, also began on a farm, except I wanted to get the heck out of there. So I moved from California to New York City to go to college. I went to Barnard College, a women's college, where every morning you would wake up and check your phone messages. I don't know if dorms still have phones in them, but we did, and you would hear about your lunch special or whatever, but it started with this woman, Dorothy, who would say, "Good morning, my bold, beautiful, brilliant Barnard women." And this is how I woke up for 4 years. And a friend of mine from Columbia across the street came over one day and heard it, and he was so jealous that the men of Columbia University didn't get that message. And I said, "You guys have enough going for you. We need this." So throughout all of my college experience, I was very interested in politics, but this was all after my first vote for Al Gore didn't seem to count for very much. So it was a very it was a time where people were very discouraged. Some people might draw some comparisons to today. And like then, people were organizing and sort of responding to things that were coming out of the Bush administration. But at that time, every time I tried to get involved in a campaign or an issue, I'd kind of show up at the event and people would kind of look at you like, well, you haven't done it before, so I don't think that we're going to let you in. And so I just kind of got frustrated with politics for a few years. It felt like all of that organizing didn't really get us any movement. And so when I graduated in 2004, I was deciding, am I going to go into politics or am I going to do something else? So I went into something else. I went into history editing, which is like the most head in the sand type of thing that you can do, editing history books. And the first week that I started my job was the week that Barack Obama gave his speech at the 2004 convention. And I had read his book that summer, been talking him up. He went to the same college. His sister went to my college. And I called my mom that night after the speech, and I said, "Mom, just so you know, in like 10, 15, 20 years, when that man runs for president, I don't know where I'm going to be. I don't know if I'm going to have kids. You're going to have to watch them. I'm going to be unemployed. I'm going to go all in." So I was a little surprised 3 years later when he announced he was running, and my mom and many other friends called me up and said, well, are you going to do it? So I started volunteering in New York City, and I got involved in the Women for Obama up there and found that unlike any other political campaign or organization I'd ever worked with, I showed up and said, I don't know what I'm doing. And they said, how about you plan this rally in Central Park for, 500 women, and it's going to be on national TV. And I was like, I don't know how to do that. I don't know. Do you need a permit for that? Who do you call? And people just kind of showed you the ropes and taught you how to do that. And that was one of the best things about that campaign, which led me all the way down here to Philadelphia, where I worked on 15th and Christian Street. That's how I got here. I chose Philadelphia for a very simple reason. I didn't have a car. It was in a battleground state, and I could get my friends to come down on the weekend to knock on doors. So we did that, and it was just, completely life-changing experience for me. I had been editing history books. I'm a slow reader. It was a very difficult job, and suddenly I was in a campaign office where everything was lively and everything came really naturally to me. And so I realized that was where I was supposed to be in life, and basically had been working in campaigns ever since then. Took a little time off to work at a tech company with my college roommate, and then eventually went and got lucky enough through a number of interesting events to get to run the mayor's campaign. And really thought I would always be a campaign person. After we won the election, the primary, the mayor brought up this movie, The Candidate, which I've never actually watched. But I gather that at the end of it, the candidate goes to the campaign manager, what do we do now? And the campaign manager says, good luck. And that's sort of what I was comfortable with at that point in time. I was like, I don't know how you're going to do all that stuff that we said you were going to do, but I don't know if I'm going to be around for that. So, throughout the whole course of the summer, the mayor kept saying, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this. And I said, I can't, I'm too young, I haven't worked in city government, I'm inexperienced, I don't know enough people, I can't. And he kind of kept doing that. And then I kept reading about people in the newspaper who were generally old white guys who were like, oh yes, this is going to be the mayor's chief of staff. And I was like, that's not true. That's not true at all. He can't do that. He doesn't have the right experience at all. So through sort of a lot of pushing from the mayor and other folks and just deciding to take a chance, I ended up where I am now.
But one of the things that I heard repeatedly was that women sometimes hold ourselves back because of our mindsets, societal mindsets, the way we were raised. Each and every one of you talked about family, how family influenced you. But I want to talk about some of the challenges that you experienced, the mental challenges, and some of the actual challenges you experienced in your various fields. And don't worry, in about 20 minutes, we will open it up to Q&A. So I know that everybody's probably chomping at the bit there. But let's talk about that, because that's a real issue, I think, for women when we talk about breaking the glass ceiling in innovation, education, health, all these areas of politics. So whoever wants to jump in, we have the microphone floating. If your mic worked, go right ahead.
I'll jump in. So just historically in banking, right, and I'm going to stick to the script for the sake of time. Historically in banking, women did not go into banking until about 1849 in the United States, 1862 in Europe. And in 1849, you may recall, Seneca Falls became really important to women, right? And that was the year of the gold rush. So a bunch of women went and rushed to California, but the jobs they got, and they became very wealthy, was starting hotels, ironing, washing clothes, doing laundry, service, that opening stores and things like that. It was not actually with the money. So then Henry Wells, the founder of Wells Fargo, said we need to start a Wells College for women. And Wells Fargo started to put women in banking, right? So there are a couple of women who were really distinguished. One of them, last name, her name was Cassie. She was a widower with 4 children. And the reason why she did so well, and she eventually went to work for the Telegraph, Western Union, and did very well, is because she didn't have a husband. She didn't have the domestic task. So she became a non-traditional parent to the kids and, She basically could be at work at 12 hours a day. That was me. Growing up in corporate America, my daughter, I became a single parent when my daughter was 5 years old. There were times when I left the office. I managed Little League. I coached Little League for her. I did stuff. Her father was not very involved in the life. He lives in another state. And then we went back after dinner to the office, and she had her sleeping bag in my office, and she just read and lay down next to me. Because even though, women, we cannot have everything at the same time, we can have everything. And part of my plan was she needs to have everything because I didn't. So that was one of the challenges. I did not want to hire babysitters. My daughter did not stay with somebody outside of family or very trusted friends until she was 11 years old. Because I wanted her safety and so forth. That was part of the responsibility. But a challenge is that as women, that caring part of us pulls us always towards our families, towards the domestic responsibilities that conservatively and historically we're supposed to fulfill.
Wow. So I would love to hear other challenges that you experienced and how you overcame them.
So it was an interesting experience being an openly transgender woman and then being appointed to this position. So there was a fair amount of press associated with that. And so I had always been out, and I was out at Penn State Hershey, but this was out to a different degree because it was in the papers, et cetera. And I knew that, but it was still surprising. And there was some pushback, not that much pushback. What everyone sort of realized after I was nominated and sworn in as acting physician general is I had to be confirmed by the overwhelmingly conservative Republican State Senate of Pennsylvania. And so, and that was also an interesting experience. So I got to visit all of the senators in Pennsylvania, which was interesting for me to learn about the legislative process and was probably a unique experience for them, for many of them, to have an openly transgender woman come into their chambers and shake my hand and talk about public health. And that, it worked out exceedingly well, so that I was overwhelmingly, in fact, I was unanimously confirmed by the Pennsylvania State Senate in June of 2015. And, I think to their credit, they basically judged me based upon my qualifications. Here we are. My mic doesn't seem to work. So that they basically viewed me on my professional qualifications, which is exactly the way it should be. And so going throughout the state, I do a lot of advocacy for LGBTQ individuals and talk about health disparities. Of course, I know you are fortunate enough in Philadelphia to have a non-discrimination ordinance that includes sexual orientation, gender identity and expression, but we do not have that in Pennsylvania. So it's great that Philadelphia has that. But in Pennsylvania, I was at Penn State Hershey, but if I had worked for a private practice down the street, I could have been fired, and that would have been legal in Pennsylvania. But I also advocate a lot about opioids. And what's unique is that when I am about the state talking about prescription drug abuse, talking about heroin, and talking about overdoses, it is an absolute non-issue that I am an openly transgender woman. And when I speak with senators and with community stakeholders, it is not an issue. So I think that we have, that demonstrates that we have made progress, although we have a lot of progress to go, and we have to be particularly aware of vulnerable populations in Philadelphia, but throughout the state and throughout the nation, particularly LGBT individuals of color, particularly transgender women of color who suffer not only harassment but suffer violence. And I think that we have to work to improve equality for all of us.
Yeah, and thank you, it's so true. And I want to get Bridget to jump in here because the tech world is a world where there are very few people of color. I think in Philadelphia, there's 2% of the people working in tech fields are African American. I know that, but the people of color is a very small portion.
Absolutely.
So not only are you a person of color, but you're also a woman working in the field of innovation. What have been some of your barriers, and how did you, or challenges, and how did you overcome them?
Absolutely. And so the diversity or the lack of diversity of people of color or women in technology is a national issue. The White House has tackled it under President Obama. And it even is so much of an issue that there's, a lot of even resources and money and foundations going toward how do we address this issue. Because as I said earlier, technology crosses all sectors, and it really is the next great opportunity that we're going to build wealth in this country, that anyone can just get in, get a computer, get a broadband connection, have an idea, and have resources to help you grow that idea to build a business. The reason why it's important that diversity exists, because it is the next great opportunity to build wealth in the economy. And if we don't have the diversity, particularly of a city like Philadelphia, that's minority majority, that looks so much of color, and yet we represent 2% of African Americans in tech, 3% of Latinos in tech, that's not really reflective, right? So I think it's an issue that we're all trying to address as a village. But for me, I had a little bit of at least of a blessing, because someone had laid out a platform for me. Someone had put me at the table. Someone created a seat for me to be able to have a voice. And that doesn't come all the time. That voice sometimes still is very squandered. I'm still probably one of the only, black woman that sits at the table of cable executives and also sits at tables of white male, techies. And I think, it comes from having supportive community and networks. And I think what is unique, though, to Philadelphia, even though we have a very small percentage of people of color and women in technology, I think for women it's 30%, but for women of color it's much, much lower. But we have support here. So Philadelphia has a strong technology community that is growing, that is becoming more supportive of bringing others in. I think it really is one of those issues that you have to have your communal support. We have to be able to lift each other up, and we have to be able to say, I see you and I'm going to help you as well. Because I think that we're not going to get the same opportunities to get hired, or we're not going to get the same opportunities to get the same pay. We're not going to get the same opportunities to, be able to create an idea and get some venture capitalists to say, oh, I agree with that. I'm going to give you, $500,000 in startup capital. That does not happen for women, particularly of color in the industry. So I think for the most part, at least what has helped me is really creating support systems. And if they weren't there, we created them. If the networks weren't there, we created them. If we weren't, or if I wasn't seeing people that looked like me, I saw myself and put myself there so others could see themselves in each other or see themselves in that industry. But it's probably, an issue that we still need to tackle as a city more collaboratively and more effectively. And I think, we're doing it slowly, but we definitely should ramp up soon, because, most cities are definitely seeing it as an issue. And I think it's something that, as a country, we have to make sure that we are very much in step with everyone being a part of either innovation, technology, entrepreneurship, or even being a woman. And just a couple real quick stats, there's more than 9.4 million firms owned by women in this country. That's $1.5 trillion. That's a lot of money. 2.9 million of those firms are owned by women of color. And that means that's $226 billion that's coming in revenue annually. And I think I say that because that's a powerful place to be. We're not just women, we're also consumers, and we're creating economy. And I think when you hear those numbers, that's a big deal. In Philadelphia alone, in 2007, there were 30,000 businesses. In 2012, there's 50,000 businesses owned by women. So we're definitely moving the dial. That's like 46% of a change. We're moving the dial, but I think we're moving it in a way that people are seeing our value, our worth, and they're seeing that we have the power to create new opportunities for ourselves, whether it's in tech or any of the other sectors, but definitely in technology. This is a good time to be right now as a woman.
And I will say, yes, y'all can clap for that, yes. And I will say, because I do go to a lot of women's conferences, and one of the things that was a big difference between men and women that you hear about is that women would say, if they didn't have the qualifications, they say, well, I need to take another class, or I need to do this before I can apply for this job, and we would count ourselves out. Whereas men, they didn't know, they wouldn't even know what they were doing, but they'd apply anyway. And so I want both Jane and I want goodness, your name just...
Donna.
Donna, I was about to say that. Donna, I want both of you all to talk about, you both mentioned ageism, you mentioned getting into fields with little experience and sort of finding your way, overcoming those challenges. Talk about those barriers that a lot of women, we kind of, some of us will put that wall up before we even try, but both of you did not do that. You pushed through and you made it happen anyway. Donna, jump right in, and then Jane, jump in.
Sure. When I decided to go back to school and get a master's degree. I went to New York to do that. And I thought that I would use that master's to come back and further build Children First, but had the opportunity to go to Washington and work with then Secretary Cisneros. And it was just an opportunity I felt like I couldn't turn down. And I didn't know anything about policy. I'd never done policy work. And here I was in Washington.
Figuring it out.
Figuring it out, developing policy. I worked on policy around fatherhood. I worked on, I had the opportunity to work on Head Start. The Congress at that time was considering taking Head Start out of housing developments because they felt they didn't want to fund a Head Start in housing developments and have this other pot of money at HHS for Head Start too, that it was kind of double dipping. And so one of my tasks was sort of to create an opportunity to share with Congresspeople why it was important to have Head Start funding remain in HUD. And so was able to do that, created a video, and also worked on a report, and went around the country, interviewed people all over the country around Head Start. It was just a great opportunity, and I learned how to work on policy there. I had Nelson Judge Diaz was Chief General Counsel. And, you know, when I find myself getting in trouble, I run upstairs to see Nelson and say, I need some advice. So he was in Washington at the time, so I could always count on him for advice. And Maureen Kennedy, who'd been the head of policy, whom I was working for, also provided a lot of great advice for me. But it was a great opportunity. I also worked on the counter to welfare reform. A counter argument to the current welfare reform policy, and so had an opportunity to work on national, really important national policy during that time. But it was the first time that I was attacking something that I actually didn't have the experience. But one of the things that that changed at HUD while I was there, so the policy folks would sort of stay in their bubble, while the folks that were running housing and other departments, community economic development, were in their silos. And so they were more the people with the on-the-ground experience that had a lot of more on-the-ground experience, and the policy folks were usually academics. And so one of the things that I changed while I was there is had the opportunity to do, and the secretary let me do, was form teams of policy folks working with the practitioners, so that no longer was policy sort of developed in a vacuum, but that the policy teams and the practitioner teams would work together on developing policy. And so that was something that I had the opportunity to do while I was there at HUD. When Maureen Kennedy left as the head of policy, a gentleman came in as the head of policy. He didn't give me as much leeway as Maureen had given me, but I just kept pushing and kept doing. And I had developed such a strong relationship with the secretary in the policy division that they would let me know when he was excluding me from meetings. And,
sticking together.
And they would say, Donna, there's this meeting that's going to be happening, and I noticed that it wasn't on your calendar. And so I made sure that I was in those meetings. And that was because of the women that were secretaries in the department, making sure that I was at the table.
Women sticking together. I love that. I love that. Jane?
Yeah, so I think there's sort of two major points. The first is that I think for women, particularly when you get into a position where you're always in a position where you're able to help promote other women and really thinking through that. Because I have found in the last year, I've never been in a position where people felt like I could give them a job. I've never, working on a campaign, nobody wants to do that. And they know that it's low pay and long hours. But working in city government, the number of, men who I would not necessarily consider qualified for a certain level of position that assume that they are qualified for that position and are shocked to hear that you think that they might not be there yet is interesting. And I don't tend to have a lot of women who are at that same level coming to me and saying, I think I should be this, I think I should be that. I've seen that opening. I tend to see people kind of underselling themselves a lot. And you see that one of the biggest challenges that we have as a workforce in the city of Philadelphia is that, this is a very historic problem, that people who have risen up in the ranks tend to be white and tend to be male, and that is not what the city of Philadelphia looks like, and the mayor knows that that's not the type of thing that's going to get it done. So it's really being intentional in building up a pipeline of support, because I think it takes a little bit more pushing to get women to a point where they need to be out there, whereas certain men are just going to assume that they're qualified and assume that they're ready to go with that.
This is an opportunity for you to get what you need to get out of today's session. So the program, what we're calling this, is called Conversation Among Friends. You may have came here by yourself. You may have signed up with another colleague or something, or met the person next to you. But my challenge to each and every one of you is, before you leave today, to make 5 new friends. And I say friends because today won't be the last time that you see these individuals. We heard this morning about getting business cards, right? Not only is it about getting business cards, but it's about a conversation to ask the individual what they do. Write a little comment on the back of your card. Email them before end of day today and set up time to meet. I want you to strike up the conversations as you're doing now. But one of the things I need to tell you, they're going around currently to do Facebook Living. So we have roving ambassadors who are doing that. So if you have a really great story that you want to share, who's doing the roving? All right, we have Joanna, Ricardo. Who else is doing Facebook roving? All right, we have some folks in the back. So there's about 4 or 5 people roving around to get interviews to do our Facebook Live. So if you want to be featured and tell a story about today's summit, please do so. The Women's State of PHL. I also want to share with you what the importance of networking is all about, and that's about connections. Great leaders don't set out to be a leader. And you know why? Because they set out to make a difference, and that's why you're all here, is to make a difference personally and professionally. And remember, it's never about our roles or our titles, not at all. It's really about us setting the goal. And can I have your attention for 1 second? This is just something that I live my motto by, and this is a quote. Unfortunately, it was an anonymous quote. I don't know who said it, but it says, "For all of you, your smile, that's your logo," right? You see the logos of all these top brands, but you have your own logo every day, and you are to use it. That is your smile. Your personality, each and every personality is so different and unique, and guess what? Your personality is your business card. And how you leave other people feeling after you've had an experience with them, whether once or ongoing, that becomes your trademark. So you all have your own business, and your own business is yourself. So now's the time to start being your own entrepreneur and doing whatever you want to do. And that's what today's event is all about, that State of Women PHL hashtag. I want today's event to be trending on social media. So all of you get out your phones, take pictures. Pictures are worth 1,000 words, right? So we are going to get this trending, hashtag Women State PHL. It's on the cover of your program book. And tweet Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, whatever it is, we want the social media channels to be flooded. This is the last day of National History, Women's History Month. Let it be here in Philadelphia that skyrockets what's going on, the importance that we feel in Philadelphia, the impact that you are having today. So thank you for being here. We have an amazing, amazing keynote speaker coming up, and we are just so honored and humbled to have her here with us today. And that is Christina, also known as Tina Tchen. And as you heard, she's the former assistant to President Barack Obama's. So we will be hearing momentarily from Tina, who's going to give you the best advice you need to hear. So take notes and listen up, because she will change and inspire your lives even more than what she has done currently for advocating for all women of all ages. So thank you very much and enjoy the rest of the session. Congratulations.
Did everybody get to make a new friend today? Any new hands to show you met someone new? All right, awesome. Okay, this is a safe space. We want you to be able to connect with people, to talk to people, make future plans to follow up with people, because this is what we talked about, a band of sisters. This is what we're doing here. We're going to be getting back to you further after this to make sure you finish your questionnaire. So now I'm going into the best for the last. We've saved Tina Tchen for you, and she's our incredible keynote speaker. We're so fortunate to be able to get her here to be our very first speaker at our very first summit. She's the former assistant to President Barack Obama and was the chief of staff to First Lady Michelle Obama. During her 8 years in the White House, Tina served as the executive director of the Council on Women and Girls and led the very first summit on working families at the White House, as well as she did the United States of Women. And I actually had the privilege of going to that. That was so wonderful. It was 5,000 women, and it was amazing. And they did have round tables. So we could chat. But we're gonna attend to that the next time to make sure we have even more opportunities to engage. So Tina was also the first director of the White House Office of Public Engagement. So we're like looking at parallel jobs here. And I had the privilege of meeting Tina before and found her to be one of the most warmest, most accessible, down-to-earth bureaucrats, if one was to call that. She did not fit the role of a bureaucrat at all. This is a woman who speaks from her gut. And by the way, the reputation is that she keeps very calm, and anything that happens, lots of stuff happening, people go there. Yeah, we're going to recognize.
We're having trouble hearing Nina, so we need the room to quiet down a little bit. Not a little bit, a lot.
Okay, I will scream. You know why? It's because this is a little, I'll adjust this.
And so, we also want you to very much hear the message of this afternoon. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Listen to her. Listen to Javita, or else she'll come and get your number. Now I'm speaking more clearly. Before I go further, we overlooked a very important person in the room, and without whom this couldn't happen. This is to acknowledge the Women's Outreach and Advocacy Center, Dr. Claudia Curry. Please give her a round of applause, because she is our co-sponsor in this space. This is why we'll be able to do that. So going back to Tina, I wanted to say I had the privilege of meeting her, and she has a reputation of being someone who can solve problems, and that is so quintessentially a woman's thing, right? And that's a good thing to have, and other people need to learn that. We can be the role model for men to understand how we can multitask, stay calm, and get the job done, and she definitely is one of them. Along with all her professional accolades, she's a daughter of immigrants, a mother, a sister, an aunt, and a dog owner. That was the one that got me. That's where I started, because I love animals and I love dogs. And the Philadelphia Commission for Women, the Mayor's Office of Public Engagement, and the City of Philadelphia is proud and honored to present to you Tina Tchen. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Nina, and good afternoon. All right, y'all can keep eating, because I know that's important. Keep doing that. And it is really my great honor and pleasure to be here. And now that I'm unemployed, I actually got to stay the whole time, which is a treat for me. Because usually you're like in and out and you're back to the White House. No, now I get to sort of be with you the whole day, and I'm glad I did. Because what amazing work you're doing here in Philadelphia, I gotta tell you. So first of all, I wanna give Nina, Jovinda, everybody who at the Philadelphia Commission for Women, a round of applause for the amazing, amazing work that you are doing. I also have to acknowledge where we are because, as was mentioned, Deisha Dyer, who is my good friend, and she was the first African-American woman social secretary for the White House. Amazing. That means, so was the social secretary. She was responsible for every major event that we had at the White House, for putting it on, that included state dinners with Germany and Japan and China and Italy, which was our last one, the Easter egg roll with 30,000 people coming onto the White House. Every time you saw, the president and the first lady in a music event or in a press conference, Deisha Dyer and her team put that all together and made sure it worked flawlessly. And she's a graduate of this community college. And then finally, I want to acknowledge these young people over here because I am so impressed that you all are here and that you're all engaged, that you are asking questions, that you're staying with us because you are our future. And I love that these young women are starting right now and getting involved, and I want to give you all a round of applause. Now, I have to say, this is the last day of Women's History Month, as it was noted, and, I can't really think of a better way or a better place to spend the last day of Women's History Month than here with you here in Philadelphia, because you are a place that stands and a symbol of equality and freedom in our country, and you are leading the way in so many ways, not just with this chartered, city chartered commission, which is a big deal, with what the mayor has done with his appointments, with the support that this entire city has always given the Obama administration during our 8 years. But also, what you are doing, and I'm going to talk about a little more on things like equal pay and paid sick leave. Everything that you are doing is so impressive. So I'm really honored to be here. I'm really honored to be here at your first ever summit for the Philadelphia Commission for Women. And preparing for this speech sort of gave me an opportunity to reflect back, to sort of think backwards to our first days in the White House. And as Nina noted, I have a special, place in my heart for someone who's called the Deputy Mayor for Public Engagement, because that is how we named the office, the outreach office for the president, as the Office of Public Engagement. It was the first time it was ever called that. I will say the current administration is reverting to the old name, the Public Liaison, but I like the name Public Engagement, because that's really what that's supposed to be about. It's letting the public engage with the mayor, in our case, letting the public really engage with the president and the first lady. And when I took that job, I took the job on condition that I could keep outreach for women and girls for myself, because I really had wanted to continue the work I'd been doing my entire adult life, back to the 70s and 80s, even when I was a NOW activist living in Springfield, Illinois, and trying to get the Equal Rights Amendment passed. Working on women and girls issues was a passion of mine. Now, I will say, mostly, I did for my whole life, I had to do it in what we call the extracurricular hours. You all who are like volunteers on this commission know what I mean, right? It's the volunteer, unpaid, after hours, after your paying job part of my time, and that's mostly what I did. And it was really only when I came to the White House for the first time 8 years ago that I had the opportunity to work on these issues full-time as part of my day job. And it's an opportunity I never dreamed I would have, not just working on those issues, but obviously working on those issues from the most powerful building, on the planet, for, I think, someone who is the most powerful leader on the planet. And I have to tell you a little bit of those early days in the White House. So, those TV shows you watch all the time, people are walking down the hallways of the White House, and they're having these dramatic conversations, and the music is rising. Yeah, like that's not really how it happens. And not just because there's no music, there were certainly dramatic conversations, but the real problem is it's a really small building. There are no long hallways, I have to tell you. There really aren't. They're very just short little hallways. What there is a lot of doors, and especially, I used to tell the story right in front of the Oval Office, there's a place where there's like 6 doors. All at once. There's a door to the cabinet room, there's 2 doors to the Oval, there's a door to the Roosevelt room, there's a door, and then there's the door to go to the East Wing, which is where the First Lady's office was. So one of the first times when I had to come into that part of in order to get over to where the First Lady's office was, and all the doors were closed, which had never happened before, it's like terrifying. You're standing in this hallway, you don't want to open the wrong door, because you could open a door into the Oval Office, and when you're not supposed to be there. It was a little terrifying. So the most terrifying place in the White House, where is it? It's not the Situation Room. It's that place where all the 6 doors are. Now, shortly after we got to the White House, and in fact, it was in our first Women's History Month in 2009, that's when President Barack Obama signed the executive order that created our White House Council of Women and Girls. It was chaired by Valerie Jarrett, and I was the executive director. It included every cabinet agency and every major White House policy office, because the president's charge to everyone was that no matter what part of the federal government you were in, whether it's Department of Defense or Transportation or Health and Human Services, that the work that you did affected the lives of women and girls, and so you needed to take into account the lives of women and girls in everything that you did. I used to call it changing the DNA of the way the federal government worked and operated, so that at its core genetic code level, federal government would think about what would happen to women and girls in every decision, every policy, every program that they operate. So now, of course, when that happened, we were immediately confronted by the naysayers, saying things like, so where's the Council on Men and Boys, right? You know, what's the need for paying attention to women and girls? Isn't that reverse sex discrimination? All right, so sound familiar? Well, because we were at the White House, I resisted giving the obvious answer. But I can do it now, because guess what? I'm not there. And that is that every other council we have is basically a council of men and boys, right? You know, that even now in the 21st century, that unless we have sustained, vigorous leadership on the issues of gender discrimination, inequality, violence against women, that what will happen is we will still have a society where women still earn only 60 cents for every dollar that a man earns, that black women will still only earn 63 cents and Latinas only 54 cents, that we'll still live in a world where 1 in 3 women around the world will experience violence in their lifetime, and that includes the 1 in 5 women in college who will be sexually assaulted before they graduate. That will still be a place where only 4.6% of our country's largest companies are led by women, and only 26% of the jobs in math, science, and technology are held by women, and that we'll live in a world where 98 million girls, adolescent girls around the world, will remain out of school, relegated to lives of early marriage, early childbirth, and early death. And it's because gender discrimination is pernicious and persistent. It has transcended geography and culture and class and race and time. It's lasted for centuries. It's been handed down from generation to generation. It's an attitude that sees young girls value only in the bridal dowry that she can bring to her family when she's forced to marry a 40-year-old man. And it's the same discrimination that keeps young girls here in Pennsylvania from taking math and science class, or leads a press secretary to belittle an African-American professional woman reporter when she is doing her job. So that's why we needed a White House Council on Women and Girls, and that's why you created and charted a Philadelphia Commission for Women. Because yes, it's the 21st century, but yes, gender discrimination and inequality shamefully is still flourishing. Now, I will tell you that I am proud of what we were able to achieve for the last 8 years, and if you'll let me do this, I'm going to talk about some of our accomplishments and what we need to do going forward, which I think is especially important as we're dealing in a time now where Congress thinks it can vote, for example, as it just did, to keep women from choosing their own physicians if that physician happens to work at Planned Parenthood. So let me start with health care. So in addition to bringing affordable health insurance to over 20 million people, the Affordable Care Act also addressed the really serious gender inequities in our prior health care system. So it's hard to remember because we have short memories here in our public consciousness. But just 7 years ago, before the ACA was passed, insurance companies could charge women more for their health insurance just because they were women. There was no prohibition against gender discrimination in the healthcare field. They could refuse to pay for maternity care, even though that's, of course, the very definition of when you need health care is when you are having a baby. They could refuse to insure you or charge you an exorbitant rate if you had a pre-existing condition. And even if you had a pre-existing condition like being a breast cancer survivor who needs regular screenings. Also, another time when you need health care insurance the most. And whenever I say that phrase, I think of a woman we met 7 years ago when we were trying to pass the ACA. And she was at the White House, she was introducing the First Lady at an event for health care, telling her story as a breast cancer survivor, as someone who needed now regular screenings to make sure she was still cancer-free, and yet she was being charged rates so exorbitant that what she said was, I have a choice between having health care or having a roof over my family's head, and I have chosen to keep a roof over my family's head, so I'm going without health care and without regular screenings. That's not the America we want to go back to. And it's because of the ACA that there was, we now have something called well women health care, which we didn't have before, meaning you can get, as a woman, a health exam every year without an additional paying for more, or preventive services like diabetes screenings, domestic violence screenings, and contraception without an additional copay. And it's because of the ACA that our 26-year-old children, or for those of you who are 26 years or younger in here, get to be on your parents' health insurance and have health insurance until you're 26. Now, I will say the one silver lining in this whole debate that's happening on the ACA right now is folks who have enjoyed these benefits and really liked them now realize it's Obamacare that gave them these benefits. And now they are fighting back on this notion that we should just get rid of Obamacare. So that's something we have to continue to fight for. I think it's a culture change that's happened in our country, that we're not going back to a time that I just described, when we had a healthcare system that didn't work for people. We also fought over the last 8 years to protect a woman's reproductive freedom, our ability to control our bodies and make our own healthcare decisions for ourselves. One of the first things that President Obama did was to sign the executive order that eliminated what's known as the global gag rule, that prevented NGOs around the country from even just talking about abortion, even if no federal funds were being used for it. And sadly, that was one of the first executive orders that the new administration undid. But we're going to continue to fight for that and continue to fight for the right of every woman to make the healthcare decisions that belong to herself and her family and her physician only, and, as I mentioned earlier, be able to choose the physician that she wants to, including Planned Parenthood, which, by the way, only spends 3% of its entire budget on abortions, and none of that's federal funds. Instead, what does Planned Parenthood do? It serves nearly 3 million people in this country with the whole range of healthcare services they need, 79% of whom are at or below the poverty level. That's who's being harmed when we say we want to defund Planned Parenthood. Now, it's been over 20 years since Senator Joe Biden wrote and championed the first federal Violence Against Women Act, and really brought the scourge of domestic violence out of the shadows. And yet today, we know that the scourge of violence against women continues at almost the same pace. And when there's stresses on society, like we had in the Great Recession of 2008, 2009, then even more women experience domestic violence at home. And that's why one of the first things, again, President Obama did, was to make sure we incorporated in the Recovery Act money for domestic violence shelters and rape crisis centers, which were feeling the triple threat of increased stresses at home, reduced federal money, reduced private donations. We also appropriated tens of millions of dollars to bring down the rape kit backlog You know what that is? That's a thing where rape kits were tested and just put on a shelf for years and years and years, letting rapists go free. You know, we, together with the Department of Justice and state's attorneys around the country, are attacking that backlog. It's why we were able to pass and reauthorize the Violence Against Women Act in 2013, even in a Republican-held Congress. And importantly, we made clear that Title IX, which, you know, as many of you know, we were talking about sports, Title IX, which is the landmark legislation that banned gender discrimination in our federally funded schools, and really is the thing that allowed women's sports to come into its own, because you could no longer just fund men's sports without funding women's sports. But because it bans gender discrimination, we also made clear in a directive from the Department of Education that it required schools to address the issue of sexual assault, that to not support rape victims and hold perpetrators accountable was gender discrimination banned by federal law. Now, I have to actually give credit not just to the Department of Education and the Vice President for what happened next, which was a whole sea change around campus sexual assault on our campuses. I have to credit young women like all of you here, who are the ones who stepped forward. You know, people like Annie Casey and Andrea Pino, who you may recognize from the Hunting Ground movie. They came to the White House and they told their stories as victims of sexual assault with tremendous courage and tremendous eloquence. And they said, you may have issued this ruling, but the schools aren't following it. And these were schools, these were kind of like the brand name schools, the Ivy League schools, the Big Ten schools, the Pac-8 schools, all of whom were not supporting victims, telling the victims after they were assaulted, oh, well, you just take the semester off, and no, we're not going to give you your tuition back if you can't handle it while the perpetrator's here. That's not what was required. So their activism, so it was the activism of young people your age that led to the creation of the first ever White House task force to protect students from campus sexual assault, where we issued tools and guidance. We upped the enforcement by the Department of Education. The Department of Education started listing the schools that were under investigation, and you can go on the website right now and see the list of schools that are under investigation, so you can be an informed consumer as you're making your college choices. And importantly, the young people, including the young men, became part of our It's On Us campaign, which is a social media and an activism campaign on 500 college campuses across the country that are banding together to change rape culture on campus, to make it clear that sexual assault's not acceptable in their community. And you can take the pledge at itsonus.org, and if you want to be inspired, you can go on YouTube and see the videos that those young people themselves, including, as I said, college athletes and Greek life and leaders on campus have done themselves to actually step up and take ownership on combating sexual assault. And what we all need to do now is be vigilant on Title IX. And we have to make sure that there are any efforts to water down Title IX, to water down these efforts, to water down the enforcement work of the Department of Justice and the Department of Education do not succeed. Because we need to have our young people protected, and they're entitled to be protected when they're going to school. Now, when the First Lady and I started talking about what would be her last initiative during the administration, and her one international initiative, we learned about the tens of millions of girls around the world who are not in school. And we were spurred into action, in particular, by a meeting that we held in October of 2013 at the White House with a somewhat unexpected visitor. Now, to set the stage for this, in October of 2013, we were in what was known as a government shutdown, like the Republicans hadn't passed a budget, so we had no money to operate the government. That meant most of the White House staff were furloughed and at home, which left only a handful of us at the more senior levels to come in. The problem with that is, if you're the most senior person, you don't know how to get somebody in the building. That was me. There's a very complicated process to waive somebody in the building, get them clearance. We kind of didn't do it correctly, so Malala Yousafzai, who was coming to visit, and her father were caught in a rainstorm, at my fault, outside, waiting to come in to see the President and the First Lady. They were very gracious about it. They overcame that. We gave them things to dry off before they went into the Oval. But there was an unbelievable meeting that I had the great good fortune to be part of with the President and the First Lady, sitting with Malala and her father, as she talked about her life and her experience. And if you will recall, Malala Yousafzai was a young girl in Pakistan who was going to school at the school her father started, a school for girls in Pakistan, when Taliban terrorists and gunmen boarded the bus that she was on and shot her in the face, hoping that she would die. But this young woman is so courageous. She didn't die. She is now out there speaking as a world advocate for global education for girls. And I saw the president ask actually her father, you know, how did you come to support her, knowing the risks, right, that your daughter would face being an advocate for girls' education? And, you know, he simply said to President Obama, look at her. How could you not support this? How could you not educate this young girl? And I said that day to Susan Rice, our national security advisor, we have to do something on adolescent girls' education. And then I learned, as we learned about adolescent girls' education, that not only is it the right thing to do for girls like Malala, educating our global adolescent girls is actually the linchpin to solving global poverty, global health issues, even national security. We know from studies that for every year of education that a girl gets, her earnings power increases by 18%. And if a country educates just 1% more girls in its population, its entire GDP will go up by 0.1%. We know that there's other estimates that say the failure to educate girls is leading to $1 billion in lost economic growth every year. And educating a girl really invests in the entire family because women invest 90% of their earnings back into their families. If a girl's educated, she doesn't get married early, she doesn't give childbirth too early, her mortality rises, the health and well-being of her children rises, the probability of the infant, of a girl who's educated dying, goes down by 5 to 10% for every year of education that she gets. And importantly, state departments from both Democratic and Republican administrations and the UN all agree that educating girls is one of the keys to national security, because an educated girl is also investing in her community. It is contributing to the peace and security of that community. And I often say the most telling proof on this point is the fact that there's a reason why the Taliban and the Boko Haram, who kidnapped those 200 girls from Chibok in Nigeria, there's a reason they go after girls who are trying to get an education. Because the terrorists know that the most effective way to disrupt the peace and security of a community is to keep its girls uneducated and to keep people afraid to send their girls to school. So we were motivated, the First Lady and all of us in the White House, to really do something for girls' education. Because, as I said before, the number of girls who are not receiving an education around the world is 98 million right now, as we talk about it. 98 million. There are girls like Halima Roberts, who was a fabulous young woman from Malawi that we met just this last September with Mrs. Obama. Halima is works with a USAID program who brought her to the United States, and she stood on a Broadway stage at age 17. And spoke to a gathering during the UN General Assembly of not just Mrs. Obama, but Queen Rania and the spouses of some of the world's leaders, half of the world's leaders around the globe. And she spoke so incredibly. Halima's story was, at age 15, she's in Malawi, and the tradition there, she, at age 15, was married to a 40-year-old man. Taken from her school, taken from her parents, married to a 40-year-old man. But Halima, to her credit, didn't want to stay there. And she got in touch with a USAID-funded program which funds the Mothers. It's actually called, I think, the Mothers Group. And the Mothers Group is a group of women activists in Malawi who are supporting young girls who want to go get their education. And she was able to go to her husband. Now, every time I tell the story, it's like a 15-year-old girl had a husband. And I tell the story, she went to her husband. It's just mind-boggling to even think about. And said to him, the Mothers Group is going to come after you if you do not let me go home to my grandmother and go back to school. And the Mothers Group supported her. And he let her go. And she went back, and right now, when we met her at age 17, she was back living with her grandmother. She was going to school. She still lives in tragically poor circumstances because as she stood there on the stage in New York on Broadway, said to us, I don't always eat every day, but I go to school every day. And that's the ambition of these young women around the world that we need to support. And the reason we need to support them is not just because we want to lift them up and it's the right thing to do, which it is, but also because there's a straight line. There is a straight line from Malawi and the village that Halima lives in to here in Philadelphia, or to Washington, D.C., or to my hometown of Chicago. Because what's keeping Halima from going to school, I mean, it's not as extreme as child marriage, but it's the same gender discrimination. It's the same attitudes about women and girls that keep Halima out of school and keep young girls here from going into math and STEM jobs. It's the same thing that keeps companies from paying equal pay or from promoting women. This is the same battle that we are fighting, and we need to join with women and girls across the globe to combat that. So that's what I'm proud to say we did through Let Girls Learn, which was our initiative that we launched in March of 2015. And in the year and a half that we operated Let Girls Learn, we had over $1 billion in U.S. government investment in adolescent girls programming. We were able to activate over $600 million in investment from our partners like the UK and Japan and elsewhere. We had over 100 private sector companies step up to support the Let Girls Learn Fund at the Peace Corps, and you could do it right now because Alex and Ani was one of our partners, and they're selling a Let Girls Learn bracelet as we speak, with proceeds going to support Let Girls Learn. Or you can go to iTunes and download the song, This Is For My Girls, that Diane Warren wrote, and she's donating all the proceeds to Let Girls Learn. And then this brings me to working families, which you all know a lot about in your work here in Philadelphia. So you've heard a lot. There seems to be a theme up here of single mothers. There's a lot of us, I think, who are single. I'm also a working single mom. And so one of the things I brought with me to the White House, as did Valerie Jarrett, who's also a single working mom, and as did the President and the First Lady, because they were in a household where both of them worked, was understanding the pressures that our working families are under. So right now in the United States, 2/3 of our children live in a household where they are either in a single-family household where that parent works, or like the President and the First Lady, they are in a two-headed household, with two parents where both parents work. So 2/3 of the children in the United States are living in a home where all of the adults work. That is the reality of our workforce now. And we need to have workplaces that meet that challenge. I often say we are now in the 21st century. We can organize work better than what we're doing right now with 9-to-5 work shifts. Guess what? Where does a 9-to-5 workplace come from? It comes from not just the last century, but the century before. It's an artifact of the Industrial Revolution when we set up work schedules that way, and we can do better. And that's what led to the first ever Working Family Summit that we held at the White House, to really showcase not just what we can do to make things better, like workplace flexibility, flexible scheduling, and we were able to pass the first federal workforce telework rule, or paid leave. You know, we are still the only country, only two countries in the world that has no national paid leave policy. It's like us and Papua New Guinea, that's it. You know, we cannot compete in a global economy if we keep doing this. To make sure that we have ways that women can get trained and can stay in the workforce and get promoted up, so we don't have a situation where less than 5% of our company CEOs are women. So we kept working on that, and we did things, at the Working Family Summit to also showcase the fact that it's good for business. And the president was always very clear on this. This is not just good to do for our working families, which it is, but it is good to do for our businesses, because the businesses that have working family policies are more successful. They have less turnover. They have less training costs. If they invest in their workers, they will have less employee theft and litigation, workplace litigation. So we have made clear that this is an agenda, and our National Council of Economic Advisors issued several reports to make this clear. We did things like making sure within the White House we could institute paid family leave. We couldn't do it for the whole federal workforce because that would take an act of Congress, and we couldn't get that through. But we did it within the White House, and we made sure that it was parental leave for both parents, available to men and women, available not just at the birth of a child, but if you had a sick relative, Because if you do it just for women, then guess what happens? Employers don't want to hire you because you're going to take the mandatory maternity leave. So it's very important that we have both men and women, and then we have to make the men take it. So I am proud to say that our press secretary, Josh Ernest, took it. Our chief of scheduling for the president, Chase Cushman, took it. We had a session at the White House before the Working Families Summit where we brought men together to talk about how important it was for them to stay with their children, and men who had taken time off, talked about it. And we had a Yale psychologist who said it's demonstrated by science that babies fare better the more bonding they have with both parents. So those men came back to me afterwards and said, I am so glad you made me take that parental leave, because they did have a relationship with their new baby that was different than had they kept going to work. So this is important not just for women. These are not just women's issues. These are working family issues across the board. And so I will say that, again, on culture change, it is remarkable that we now are at a time when both parties at least feel it's important to talk about this, that the Republican Party as well as the Democratic Party has talked about childcare and talked about working families. Because quite frankly, 8 years ago, we were just talking about it, and the other side was saying, oh, these are just nice to do issues. They're not really important for working families. So we've made some progress. But we have to make sure that that progress sticks and that we have policies that really truly are good for working families and don't, for example, aren't just maternity leave for just women, which in fact will be detrimental to women or not. I think there's an editorial in the New York Times today on this that makes this exact point. I have to congratulate you here in Pennsylvania and Philadelphia in particular, because what you guys have done in the city of Philadelphia is do things to take steps. You've got paid sick leave, right? Yeah. You have an ordinance that, enforces pay transparency, right? That prohibits employers from disciplining workers who talk about their pay. Pay transparency is enormously important because that's how unequal pay persists, is if you can punish workers who are talking about their work. That's what happened to Lilly Ledbetter. Do you remember Lilly Ledbetter, who was the architect behind our first bill that we signed? Well, Lily's story was she worked at the GE rubber tire plant for years, for decades. And one day, finally, a worker slipped her an anonymous note that said, you and I do the same job, but you're getting paid a whole lot less than I am. And in fact, she'd been getting paid a whole lot less for years and years and years. Now, she lost her case, and we were able to reverse it by the statute the president signed, because the Supreme Court said, oh, just because it's been happening for years, you should have known and you should have sued long ago. We changed that. But what we couldn't change was the fact that not only was she out the pay, she was out her pension. I mean, it affected her not just for the one paycheck she was getting unpaid, but when you get unequal pay like that, it affects you your whole life. It's going to affect your pension and how you can retire. So pay transparency is important. We issued one of our final rules from the EEOC was to issue a rule also requiring companies to report their wages on wage bands so that we could see it across the board. So not only can you measure it within your own company, but you can look and see, what computer programmers are getting paid all across Philadelphia and measure your pay against that. And I mention these because these are the kinds of orders to watch and to make sure that they stick and that they stay and that they don't change. And then finally, I want to talk a little bit about the United States of Women Summit that Nina mentioned, because we brought all of this work together last June, to culminate the work of the White House Council of Women and Girls in our first ever United States of Women Summit that we held in June in Washington, D.C., with 5,000 amazing women, 60% of whom were under the age of 40, so it was young people. It was diverse. We had the vice president, we had the president, we had Oprah interviewing FLOTUS, the first lady. That was probably our most popular event. But mostly what it did was to bring all of these women together who are working on the whole range of issues affecting women, whether it's education or economic opportunity or violence against women or STEM education or women's leadership and entrepreneurship, all together in the same room to talk with one another. Because what we experienced in the White House was people would come to talk to us at the White House Council of Women and Girls, but they wouldn't be talking to each other, even if they were in the same issue in the same community. And to grow as a women's movement, we need to be talking to each other, and now more than ever is important. So I'm happy to say that the United States of Women continues. It continues as its own organization, its own NGO based in Washington, D.C., and it is continuing as a grassroots motivation organization to keep women in the grassroots organized, to empower all of you who are acting locally and to support you when you're doing local actions, such as here in Philadelphia, and to act nationally and provide a national voice for women across the board and the women's movement. So you can go to the unitedstateofwomen.org, or you can follow us on Twitter or on Facebook, or on Instagram, and see what's going on across the board, and understand what's the major issue of the day to be active on, and you can engage with us and tell us what you're doing here. It is a movement across the board. We had a call before the last recess that had over 60,000 women join it from across the country. So you can be part of this national movement, continue the work. As somebody was asking, what can we do next after the Women's March? One of the things is to band together with the United States of Women, and we'll tell you what's going on, with Planned Parenthood in Washington, D.C., and how you can take steps to act. And we want you to tell us how can we support you here in Philadelphia with what you're trying to do, whether it's pushing on back against the legislature that's trying to overturn some of your work here. We want to hear about that and make sure women across the country know about what you are doing as well. And this is a movement that's going to keep on going and keep working, because one of my final message to you is that this is a long haul effort. As I said before, gender discrimination has been with us for centuries. It's going to take a long time to overcome it. We hope it's not going to take as long, as was pointed out earlier, for how long it's going to take to get to equal pay. We have to advance the pace. But we have a moment to do it, and especially these young women over here. You all have tools at your possession that most of us never had. In order to organize a mass action, we used to have to make phone calls. We used to have to knock on doors. We used to have to make phone calls. You guys can, in a moment, post something on the internet, can get a social action going, can create a meme, just like Brittany Packnett did in the last 24 hours to support black women at work, right? You can do that. You have that voice. So I want you all to use your voices. Use your voices to support women and girls. Use your voices to support each other. And keep using your voices, recognizing that change doesn't happen overnight, and it also doesn't happen in Washington. Because as I said, remember, I've been working on these issues for 40 years, and only the last 8 of them did I have the opportunity to do it from the White House. Because change really happens right here, in places like Philadelphia, and rooms like this one, when women locally and leaders are getting together and making change, in your living rooms where you're organizing, in your school classrooms where you're organizing. That's where our power is. That's what we need to get back to and amplify. I will be there with you, I will tell you. This is why I'm devoting myself to United States of Women, for my extracurricular activity. It's why we're going to keep doing this work my entire life. I'm going to keep doing this work my entire life. So thank you. Thank you for having me here. Thank you for my bell. But mostly, thank you for the work that you're doing here in Philadelphia. So keep doing it. Okay. Oh, okay.